Mohammad Marandi. He's a professor at Tehran University and joins us from the capital. Professor Marandi, good to have you with us again, sir. First of all, your response to these overnight airstrikes, please.
Well, first of all, sources in Iraq have confirmed that one person was killed, and the propaganda that's put out by the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is, as usual, very inaccurate. The strikes were limited. Most of the bombs apparently were not targeted at anything in particular. The Americans were careful not to create too much anger, but there will be outrage in Iraq because these strikes were carried out in eastern Syria, where these troops were fighting ISIS, and they had nothing to do with any attack by the Iraqi resistance against the U.S. occupation. So effectively what the Americans did was that they violated Iraqi airspace, they violated Syrian airspace, they murdered Iraqis in Syria. It's, that's traditional American illegal occupation behavior.
And Professor Marandi, these were Iranian-backed militia. Is that not correct?
No, I think this is one of those terms that Western countries use to justify their atrocities and their illegal activities. The Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq are a part of the Iraqi armed forces. They are part of the Iraqi state apparatus, and they are Iraqis. They have Iraqi passports, they have Iraqi citizenship, they live in Iraqi cities, they speak Arabic, they eat Iraqi food, they have Iraqi family.
And where do they receive funding from, Professor Marandi?
They will be buried in Iraq. And they are part of the Iraqi state apparatus. They are part of the state in Iraq. The Americans try to use terminology to attribute them to Iran, whereas they are Iraqis. They are the people who actually defeated ISIS. These are the forces that led the defeat of ISIS in Iraq and helped defeat them in Iraq, whereas it was the Americans who helped create the menace of ISIS and al-Qaeda in both Iraq and Syria, as we know through the Defense Intelligence Agency document of 2012, as well as the email from Jake Sullivan in 2012, February the 12th, to Clinton, where he said, in Syria, al-Qaeda is on our side. So whereas the Americans were supporting ISIS and al-Qaeda, the U.S. and its allies, the Iraqis, the Popular Mobilization Forces, they spearheaded the defeat of ISIS in Iraq. And the interesting thing is that no one speaks about the fact that the attacks on the American occupation bases, which are in Iraq, despite Iraqi parliament voting for them to leave, those attacks were carried out hundreds of kilometers away from where these airstrikes were carried out, where this young man was murdered. And this young man who was murdered was killed in Syria, fighting on the front line on the fight against ISIS. And we know that in Syria, in the area that is occupied by the United States, the Al-Tanf area, ISIS forces attack Syrian forces from those territories. They carry out hit-and-run operations. They go from the U.S. occupied territory, hit Syrian soldiers, and then go back into those territories. So it's obvious that the Americans want to weaken both Iraq and Syria, and they're allowing ISIS to grow stronger through such attacks.
Okay, Professor Marandi in Tehran, thank you for your time.